Good day, my friends. How's everybody doing? I figured I'd hop on here and do a quick talk about tenancy and self management. Just got done from an awesome trail run today up in the snowy Oregon hills. And I thought, what better time to talk about being a good landlord and managing our tenants than at a point in the market where there's definitely a shift occurring. I've seen the power, if you'll call it, from the landlord slowly start to shift to the tenant. It's market based, that's at least in my market area, but I'm seeing longer days on market for renters. I'm seeing really a lot of the competitive advantage for the first time in a long time in the tenants court. And that's really important. Landlords have had the upper hand for a long time, and it's nice to see some downward pressure on pricing and see tenants have a few more options. So it's never been more important than now to take good care of our tenants and to provide them with the very best service. So I'm going to go over a few things here. I'll just summarize what I want to talk about. I'm going to go over self-management, deciding if that's right for you. At how many units should you look at professional management? We're going to talk about what tenants want. We're going to talk about how we can build property management into our ADUs. I'll cover some of the criteria that I use. I'm talking about how to follow the laws and legislation in your state and maybe how to look into that. Always get legal advice if you don't know the rules. So vetting, what's your criteria? The relationship that I like to establish with a tenant and how important that is. I'm going to share the leasing process that I go through and the lease that I use. We'll talk about deposits, how payment is taken, and how tenants are placed, and then also how tenants give notice and leave. So that's kind of the breakdown. I'll answer questions as they come in, and we'll go as long as we need to, probably at least 20 minutes here. So if you're making time for this live on your Sunday, I appreciate it. If you're watching it later, feel free to drop a comment in the section. I reply to every comment that I see. Whenever a comment comes into any of my videos, I have an email box that those go to, and I see them within a day, and I always reply. So if you're not watching it live, drop your question there, and I promise I'll get back to you with the best answer I can. And the idea of this as well is to help each other. Like, I'm not the end all know all of property management. I feel like I'm really good at taking care of my tenants, but I'm here to learn too. So if you have experiences that are different than mine, or you have local area knowledge, please drop that in the comments as well. It's not all questions to me. It could be something that you've experienced that would help others. The idea is to be better landlords or better property management, really just better people in this space by learning from what others have done and going from there. So when it comes to self-management, I'm going to talk about a few things that I like, that I really respect, that I've seen in my area, is the relationship that you have with the tenant when you are willing to self-manage. You can just give a lot better care. There's kind of a boutique product you can give, and nobody's going to take better care of your property and take more care in placing a proper tenant into your property than you. So in our area, I'm in the Oregon market, and there's a lot of property management companies. I would say, just guessing, probably 80% of landlords, large and small, in this area use a property management company. And a lot of these are bigger companies. They have to have a certain license within our state. They have to have a real estate degree of license to do property management. So there is some training, but it's not super extensive. And for so many years, there's been so many more tenants than actual rentals, with a vacancy rate in the 1% to 2% range, that nobody had to give good service. So I'm not saying there's not good property management out there, or there's not good property management in my area. But more often than not, when you go to the source, when you go to the tenant and you ask the tenant about their experiences that they've had in this market and other markets that I've explored, they always talk about how bad the service from property management is. So I think the biggest takeaway from this is, if you're building your first ADU, or maybe you're building your second or third ADU, you have a few rentals, you can really give a lot better service than a property management company, because you have less people, less systems, less processes to focus on. And therefore, you're going to be able to give more attention and better attention, if you will, to the tenant. So that's one thing that I've learned is a major advantage of self-management. You can also save money. So depending on your area or depending on how many properties you have under management, it can get really expensive. And if you think about it like rent returns or cash on cash returns, I know in our area it's about 10%. I've seen companies charge up to 14%. There's different ways that property management charges. A lot of them say they'll charge a 10% fee, and you think, oh, that's only 10% of rents collected. But there's also a leasing fee, and there's also an upcharge on any maintenance request. There's also, some kind of annual administration fee. So if you are going to choose professional property management, make sure you have a really clear understanding of the costs because they add up. So, for example, if you're looking for an investment property to yield you, say, 8% cash on cash return, that's the annual net operating income divided by what you paid for the property. If you look at some of these property management companies, they're making that or more with no risk. They don't have any skin in the game, and they're not even taking great care of the tenants because for so many years in this kind of housing crisis market, they haven't had to. So it can be really expensive to have professional management. That's one reason I choose not to do it. Eventually, there's going to come a time, I believe, in my career where I will just get tired of tenants, toilets, and turnover and probably hand it over. But I would probably at that time build my own property management company based on the criteria that I've learned some of the hard way over 20 plus years of doing this. The better service is really what I want to focus on right now. So as I said, the market's shifting. Tenants have never had more options. They've never had more power. I'm not saying that rents are crashing, but at least in my market and other markets that I watch, rents are definitely plateauing. And I think the advantage is going to be in the tenant's hands for a little while. So what does a tenant really want? We need to know what they want so we can give them what they want. So they want to rent our places over the competition's places, and they will want to stay because every time we have turnover, that's where we're going to lose money. And if you follow my content, you've probably heard me say this before, but tenants want the exact same thing that homeowners want. They want a nice custom house. They want a great location. It's got to be safe. They want nice amenities. They want privacy. So we're really focusing on giving our tenant what they want. And right now, what I'm noticing, and this is feedback that I'm getting from tenants, is a lot of my properties I would call A class just because they're new. They're new ADUs that I build. They're probably A class properties and B class areas. But when a tenant gets an A class property and you vet them and you put them in one of your ADUs, whether it's new or old, they're going to want things fixed. They're going to want attention to detail. If their dishwasher isn't working, property management, they're so big. A lot of times they have this automated work order that goes to so and so that gets sent out to the vendors. It's like turning the battleship. It just takes them a lot longer to turn. So another great advantage of self-managing is when we have any of these maintenance issues, we have this great product that's really high demand and low supply, and we get a tenant in there, they're going to expect us to fix everything quickly. So if we're on top of that and we're managing ourselves, it's going to be a lot easier for us to fix. I want to talk about finding tenants, and these are some things that I do and things I've learned over the year. Again, if you're just hopping on, I see a bunch of new people getting on here right now. Feel free to drop a comment in. It's not just questions to me, like I'm the expert. If I say something and you're like, oh, Derek, but I've done this and it's worked really well. We're here to get better and share with each other. So finding tenants right now, it used to be, a year ago, 2 years ago, 10 years ago, I would put one simple ad up on Craigslist and I would get dozens of email responses within 24 hours, literally probably 20 to 30 responses in a 24-hour period for one accessory dwelling unit. Right now, there's some seasonality with winter. Nobody wants to move right before Christmas. Everybody's broke right after the new year. So there's kind of this period between November and February that I've noticed has always been really slow. But the reduction in interest and application that I'm seeing with properties that I own and properties that other people in my network own is a huge slowdown in demand. So what used to be put up one ad on one site in our area, Craigslist was kind of that site for a decade, has now changed to you have to hit um, every single spot where eyeballs are. Right now in our area, in my opinion, that looks like posting your ad to Craigslist, posting your ad to Facebook Marketplace, posting your ad to network groups that you may have. Zillow has a program where they have an affiliation with multiple other data management companies. So if you post it on Zillow, it's going to go to apartments.com and Hotpads and all these different places. Also, word of mouth. Could it be somebody at the administration, HR department of your local hospital where they're bringing long time or short term employees in all the time? Is it looking at your welcome centers in your cities to be a reference to them to say, hey, I provide housing? It could be talking to the counselors at a local university to say, hey, as you have upperclassmen that are graduating out of the dorms, I have these rental properties available. It's really about casting a bigger net because we have to get more eyeballs on our rental now because there really are fewer tenants and there's more competition. Again, this is a great thing for the tenant. And just to shoot a quick backstory, I grew up in poverty with a single mom as a tenant my whole life until I was an adult. So I know what it's like firsthand to be in a market where the tenant gets really no respect or not many options. And again, we're really seeing that change right now. So it's more important than ever that we give our tenant the very best. So those are the areas I'd be looking for a tenant. Once I get what I would call a lead, somebody says, hey, I love your place. I would love to see it. What are the next steps? I'll talk about kind of my criteria and my punch list and what I go down kind of systematically, because if left to my own devices, I'm just going to hear everybody's story and just want to give everybody the place. And I've learned over the years that we have to have some sort of criteria that makes the decision, because if it was made out of emotion and goodwill, we wouldn't always have the best fit for the owner and the tenant. Just my experience. If you have a different experience, feel free to share it. But I'll go over my criteria that I have on a checklist. It's pretty simple. It's really similar to what you would request if you were a lender for somebody buying a house. And it's really just, I'd like to see verifiable income, 2 years. There's a lot of rules around the 3 times the rent should be your net take home pay. And I don't really agree with that or follow that. I do want to see 2 years of proof of income, whether it's W-2 income as an employee or 1099 or some kind of profit and loss statement for somebody that's self-employed. My credit score number, at least in our state, and please check your local state law and talk to a lawyer. I'm definitely not giving legal advice here, but I know in our area, you have to follow your criteria and then you have to vet and offer the place to the first qualified applicant. So it's really important with those standards that you have a criteria that you believe in and that you're going to stick with, because you're actually held to that legally. So again, it's 2 years of verifiable income, a 680 or higher credit score, and then they have to have excellent current rental references and excellent current employment references. And I usually just ask for their current employer, current landlord, and then one back for each of those. And what I found over the years is that if somebody meets that simple criteria, they're probably going to be an amazing tenant. Now, you can make exceptions to your criteria. That's your bar. You can lower your bar. I mean, I've had cases where tenants have applied for a house and they have a good paying job that they've been at for 10 years and they have good references, but they just went through a divorce and they had to give the house back to the bank and they had to give a car and a boat back to the bank, and their credit is just absolutely thrashed. And I've made exceptions for cases like that. So that's not the end all always be criteria, but it's a really good classification net to just kind of sift out what you don't think would be a good tenant or what would not maybe be the right fit for your ADU or your property. And this is kind of ADU specific because that's what I do. But if you're an investor or you're just scrolling through Facebook and through YouTube and you see this applies to really any residential rental property. I've got some full size houses also, and I use the exact same criteria on 4-bedroom house as I would on one of my ADUs that I build. So that's kind of the vetting criteria that I use. I'd like to stress again, just check your local or state laws. I know that there's every legislative cycle, there's more and more legislation coming to mandate what landlords or owners or managers can do, and giving the tenants a little bit more power, which I think again is a benefit. It's about time the tenants get a break. So that's kind of the criteria that I use. After they meet the criteria, they can see the place. So I have this systematic email that I send out. I talk about I have it pre-done, and I'm able to just systematize it. So every time I get a reply via email, I can just send out this copy and paste that says, "Hey, thank you so much for your interest. We'd love to show you the place. This is the rental criteria. As to not waste your time or mine, I've attached my simple free application. Will you please just fill this out? You don't need to put your social. You don't need to put your banking information. And all it is 2 pages. It's just like who, what, when, and then I always ask that you please attach a free snapshot of your credit report. And everybody can get one of those at Credit Karma or your bank or your credit card company. I don't need the official thorough credit report at that time. I just want to see a snapshot, even if it's just a screenshot of your phone that shows your soft pull credit score with your name and a date. That's fine. That just means that you do meet the initial criteria, and you're welcome to see the place. And occasionally I'll get somebody that says, well, I'm not giving you any information until I see it. And the only times I've made exceptions to those rules, when people have given me a little bit of grief, I show them the place. If they want to move forward, they don't meet the criteria. So if anybody gives you grief about your criteria and they're defensive up front, it might mean that they might not meet it. I'm not saying this is the perfect way to do it. It's what I've done, and it's worked for 2 decades. So that's how I do that. After they see the place, per our state law, if they're qualified, I usually would just offer them the place if everything works for both. And it's not just like, this is really, really important. It's not just like who's the best tenant for me, who's the best tenant for my place. This is about the tenant too. This is a partnership. We want it to be a long lasting partnership. We want our tenants to stay forever. Ideally, based on our KPIs, they stay for about 36 months. About 3 years is an average tenancy in one of our ADUs. But ideally, we're putting this person there, and we hope they stay forever. And we hope that they want to stay forever, not just for our sake. So there's no turnover, and there's no vacancy, and there's no loss, and there's no touching up walls and painting. We want them to be safe and happy and secure and not want to leave. So just remember that when you're placing your tenants. So once they're actually placed, we go over a very kind of, I would just call it a standard lease for our state. I use a company called Northwest Multifamily, and you can order their leases online. I think I pay about $10 for a lease for a long time, for years and years and years. I just had my own lease, and I wrote it up, and I put in all the parameters and all the little eccentricities for each property. And a couple of years ago, I called the trench warfare of landlord-tenant law, which is in Portland, Oregon. And I called around, cast out a question into one of my networks about who's the best attorney in the most landlord-tenant, turmoil place in the country, really. And at that time, it was Portland, Oregon. And I talked to a lawyer. Now, I retained a lawyer and paid a lawyer a lot of money to ask some questions about, hey, what does my lease need to have in it? What should I say instead? What should I do? And it was under that legal advice that I was told to use these certain forms. The judges in our states recognize them. So ever since that conversation, I've used these lease forms from Northwest Multifamily. You can go to their site and check them out. I'm not affiliated with them in any way, but that's who I use. And you can drop down for each tenant, you can fill it out, and then all the state law language is boilerplate in that lease. Like the last 6 pages, I think it's 9 pages total, and the last 7 of them, I believe, are all just boilerplate state law. So it's a really good way, in the lawyer's opinion, for us to protect ourselves, as well as giving the tenant all the benefits and all the legalities and all the protections that they deserve. And it talks about, if you need to give a lead paint disclosure, if you need to do a rent increase, it has all the state laws built into it. So we use the that for a lease, and lease terms are different everywhere. In our state, we have there's no cause evictions are not allowed in Oregon after, with a few exceptions, but after 1 year, you can't just evict somebody. We also have rent control in our state. I think it's about 7% plus CPI that you can raise rent annually. So there's a lot of rules we have to follow. So check those rules in your area. Make sure you're using a lease that is in line and jives with your state law. But after the lease is signed, that's just kind of our backstop. That's the backstop of legal protection that we have if things get bad. But really, well in front of that lease, we have the relationship. So we have a relationship with the tenant. We have a respectful entry with the tenant. We have great service with them anytime that there's a problem. And what I've learned over the years is if you have a relationship with the tenant, they're going to come to you with the same respect that you give them. So if you're a property management company that treats tenants like numbers, and all you care about that is if rent's paid on the first, you don't really want to hear about the tear in the screen or the chirp in the smoke alarm, just go change the batteries. You're probably going to get that same nonchalant, not super friendly service from the tenant as well. So keep that one in mind. The relationship is the most important part. When we're taking on a tenant, what we like to do is obviously the first month's rent, and then we do a security deposit equal to 1 month's rent. And that security deposit is 100% refundable. In fact, I really take a lot of pride in giving 100% of the security deposit back to my tenants. I've never docked anybody for normal wear and tear. I'd say probably, I don't know, 6 out of the 7 of our last turns, the tenant has gotten 100% of their security deposit back. And that's on an average of a 36-month stay. So I'm super proud of that. I remember what it was like to be 18 years old and rent an apartment and leave it cleaner than I found it. I touched up every single hole with spackling. I went and matched the paint color, touched up every little hole where there was a picture hung, and they kept half my deposit and gave me a bunch of BS of why. And that's always stuck with me. And I just want to give a better product than I was given. So the security deposit, what we do is 1 month's rent. And I do a walkthrough with the tenant. So during move-in, we'll walk through the whole place, and I'll actually ask them to note anything they see that they don't feel is perfect. And most of the ADUs obviously are going to be new or newer. Some of them are even brand new. Some of our older places, it takes a little bit more time because if there's a little bit of wear and tear on the corner of baseboard, we'll want to note that together. But really, it's just a trust thing. We're already treating our tenants with respect. We've already given them the benefit of the doubt and given them basically a seat at the table, if you will, that I don't think that property managers always do give to the tenants. So out of all the relationships I've ever had with tenants, I've only had one case where I kept more than like $200 out of the deposit for simple touch up. And so out of about a 25-year track record, only having one bad tenant, I feel really comfortable with the criteria that I'm using. So that's kind of the 1, 2, 3 on finding the tenant, placing the tenant, what kind of lease and what kind of security deposit. And then we'll kind of hit the middle, which is how do we take funds, and then the end of tenancy, giving notice and move out in return of funds and whatnot. So payment is a big one. There's a lot of companies out there that you can pay. You can pay software management companies. There's a lot of people I know that have up to, say, 100 units that self-manage, but a lot of that's done with software. So if you're in a spot where you're, say, 20 to 100 units, you probably would want to look at some of these softwares. I know people that have 80 or 100 units that do it all themselves on a simple spreadsheet. They have one account coming in. They have one account that they pay out of, and then they have one spreadsheet that they track everything. So you can make it as simple as or as complex as you want. What I do is I set up a sub account at my local credit union where I do all of my banking, where I do a majority of my banking, I should say. And each individual property has a sub account with, and the account title is the actual address of the property. And what I've found over the years is that's really beneficial for mostly I did that for lending. My lender helped me set it up that way because anytime I go to apply for a loan to buy a property or build a house or something, the underwriting process when you have multiple rentals is really hard, and you have to provide every single lease. They want to see every single account, every single bank statement, every single page for usually 3 to 6 months, showing that money going into those accounts. So by having a single banking institution where you have all your rents and all those sub accounts are just labeled by the actual property address, it's super simple for an underwriter to look at that and see the money coming in. It matches with the lease. They can see it over and over and over every month. And then I'm also able to take expenses out of each individually labeled sub account and apply those to repairs on that same account. So it's an easy, simple way for me to keep good accountability of what property is where financially. As far as a reserve, I try to keep about $5,000 in each account, and that's not a set hard and fast rule. I mean, I have some of my brand new ADUs. I keep just the tenant's deposit, their security deposit that I would have to return after they give notice in there, and I don't keep any overhead. I don't keep any overage in there because I'm not planning for CapEx right now, and I'll talk about that at the end here when we talk about building property management into our ADUs. But I'm not worried about a bunch of needing a slush fund. I'm not worried about the roof going out because I just put a brand new lifetime metal roof on it. I'm not worried about having the furnace go out because there's a brand new mini split and it has a 15-year parts and labor warranty. So it just depends on the property. If you're buying a cash flowing property in the Midwest and you're going to build an ADU on that, you'd probably want to have a better CapEx cushion for the primary house. And then the ADU, you wouldn't need as much in savings. So that's kind of how I hold the money. All the tenants are given, after they sign the lease, they're given a routing number and a checking account number for their specific sub account. And as much as I've tracked banking, I've always kind of had a little bit of a problem with, do I have to give the tenant my account and routing number? And I haven't found a way around that with the system I use. But what I can say is that with these sub accounts, if anything were to ever go really wrong and they were able to backfeed or hack my account, it's only the sub account that has their deposit and maybe some CapEx up to $5,000 in it. So I would never be out any more than $5,000. And I feel like that's another kind of built-in safety measure into my system. So that's kind of tenancy throughout. A few little things that I throw in there is I always give my tenants a Christmas gift. Moms get some kind of mother-in-law card or flowers on Mother's Day. This past year, I went around to the local towns, and every local town has a cool little hip coffee shop, bakery, and I just get gift cards there. And then I deliver those with a little personalized note to all the tenants. That's what I did this year. And it not only helps support local business, it also gives the tenants kind of a feeling of belonging and that you care. And if there's ever an issue that arises, we have this good relationship that's our backstop well before our lease and well before our insurance policies and whatnot. I don't know any property management companies that do that. If you do, drop a comment below. I'd love to hear about it, but I've never seen property managers do that. So it's another way we can get a competitive advantage in a market where tenants have more choices than ever. And we've got, downward pressure on prices. So it's just one more reason why people will want to stay. Hey, they take care of us. They give us a Christmas card. Mothers get Mother's Day flowers. Like stuff like that goes a long way, I think. And then as far as ending tenancy, so 30-day notice is pretty standard. One thing that I do and I write into my lease is that a 30-day notice can be given at any time of the month. It just needs to be 30 days. The only disputes I've ever had with people, and some of the worst disputes I've heard of, have to do with giving a 30-day notice on the first of the month. So make sure it's really spelled out clear in your, make sure you spell it out really clear in your lease if you're going to do anything other than that. Because most state law doesn't say that you have to give 30-day notice on any set day. So in other words, if you have a year lease with a tenant and after a year, it reverts to a month to month. And so they're 14 and a half months into their lease and they give you a notice on the 15th, it's already taken care of. They can give notice anytime as long as it's 30 days. So a 30-day notice is nice. One thing that I do that's really helped a lot, especially offset vacancy, is I have in my lease that once 30 days notice is given, the tenant agrees to allow the owner up to 3 showings with 24-hour notice to help offset vacancy. And that's super important. So if somebody gives you a 30-day notice and you wait 30 days to even list it or show it, any other good tenant that's going to fill their shoes is most likely going to have to give their notice. So you get this vacancy gap of 2 to 6 weeks. Whereas if a tenant gives notice, and I already have all of my properties, a system. I have all my pictures and all my description of a property. That day they give notice, I can just go in real quick, pull that file, punch it out to all those sites I talked about earlier. If there's some more people just jumping on the call, I talked about using Craigslist and Zillow and Facebook Marketplace and Facebook Rentals and networking group and hospitals and administration at the college. You shoot that out to everywhere, and you start getting people coming in. And then after I qualify a few applicants, I'll call the current tenant and say, hey, how's your move out process going? Is there a good time next week that I can show it? There's a few qualified people that would love to see it. I don't want to invade on your space. Tell me a time that works good for you. And they're usually like, hey, come anytime. Another thing that I also put in my lease is if you give 30 days notice and you leave earlier than 30 days, I'll actually prorate you and give you that money back if I can place a new tenant to help both offset vacancy, and it gives the current tenant a benefit because they give notice. They're all excited to move in with their significant other, or they just bought a house and they can get out a little bit early. They're getting credited back those days as long as I can place somebody in there. So they're not worried about somebody else seeing their place as they're moving out. The sooner somebody else gets in, the better chance they have of actually getting some of their money back. And then in our state, we have 29 days to give back the deposit. But what I do is just do a simple walkthrough when the tenants leave and with the tenant when they're leaving, usually a few days before, so they have time to correct anything. But we just do a walkthrough together, just like we did when they moved in. Hey, is there anything in here that's not perfect? Just tell me the truth and we'll fix it. And it's been the relationship. Again, that's the backstop where they say, yeah, you know what? For some reason, this closet door always popped off. I was frustrated trying to put it back on one day and I broke the wheels off, and that needs to be fixed. Or I hung a TV with a big swivel mount on the wall and I used 1/2-inch lag bolts and those holes need to be filled. And I always just say, hey, here's the spackle, here's the paint color, here's a small brush so you can just barely touch up the holes as opposed to like walking around with a roller and making big splotches on the wall. So I give them a little bit of training on how to fix the stuff themselves. And if not, I usually just touch that stuff up. If they've been there for 3 years, it's normal wear and tear. Don't worry about it. Super proud to give them all their deposit back. That's something that I take a lot of pride in. And then kind of the out processing is I ask them to leave me a review. I don't see many property management companies either that do this. Again, we're looking for competitive advantages. How can we give our tenant a better product at a better price? And that's by taking ownership and actually soliciting real-time feedback. Hey, you've been here for 3 years. How was your stay? How was the house? Is there anything here that you would change? Somebody told me recently when they moved out, I love everything about this place, but having the washer and dryer in the bedroom closet is kind of a bummer when I put my clothes in the dryer at night and go to sleep. It would be cool if that was reconfigured somewhere else. And in my head, I'm thinking, man, I put so much time into this ADU design. That was the best spot for it. But I've never lived here. I've never lived in one of my ADUs that had a washer and dryer in the bedroom closet. And I'm thinking to myself, I need to redesign this layout. So little things like that. Ask for feedback. I ask for a review. It's usually just an email, or I can send them to thataduguy.com and they can leave me a review there. And it's something that I can share with other tenants. Like, again, we want to empower our tenants. Not only are we going to give them the best product at the best price, but we're also going to ask for their feedback. So it's not just, we're not just stuck in our own loop of what we think is right. I'll just take a couple questions here. So Ronald, Zion, he says, or they say, do you have the same standards and processes for tiny homes as ADUs? Yes, I use the same criteria, the same standards, the same insurance policy, the same lease for everything, whether it's a short-term rental on a tiny house, whether it's an ADU, or even if it's we've got a few larger houses too. So part of my strategy is buying a primary house, usually like a 3-2 or a 4-2, 4-3, and remodeling the house and then building an ADU or two ADUs on the lot. So a lot of the portfolio is ADUs, but about a third are the parent primary house that the actual investment started with. But yes, I use the same stuff for both. Good way to generate goodwill. Yeah, for sure. And goodwill goes a long way. It's really just a relationship. And we don't do anything super special. We just treat tenants how we'd like to be treated. Again, I have a huge advantage because I was a tenant most of my life. And I just remember getting treated poorly, when I was a teenager. I rented until I was 21 years old. So I had, I think, 3 places of my own from 18 to 21. And like I talked about earlier, touching up all the walls, leaving the place clean, spotless. I mean, way nicer than I found it, and not getting half of my deposit back. Like that literally has powered me to be a better landlord. It's a huge advantage to have been a tenant, I think. One thing I'll kick on right here before we wrap this up is more of an ADU audience type talk, but building. So when we're building and designing our ADUs, if we're self-managing, there's some things that we can do to really make self-management easier. And I call it build property management into your ADU. And when I say that, I mean, not just give your tenant a really good product, but we want to use products and systems that are super low maintenance. And sometimes it's a little bit more expensive, but I call it the cry once, buy once policy. So I always start with the roof. For example, a comp shingle roof for one of these ADUs that I build at 600 square feet would cost about $2,500 installed. That's 30-pound synthetic felt. That's a nice architectural 30-year comp shingle roof and a ventilated ridge cap, about $2,500. It's done. I don't have to look at it. I don't have to touch it. But for about the same price, about $2,500, I can get a raised seam, lifetime recycled, solar ready metal roof. And my strategy is build and hold long-term infill housing. So I plan to own these ADUs when I'm 100, and I plan to give them to my kids. And so for the same price, but I'm going to put in the labor, I'm going to do it myself. It's about twice as much if I were to hire out the metal roof to the comp roof. But as a builder, I'm going to be installing this metal roof. So for the same price plus my labor, I can get a lifetime product. So I don't need a CapEx budget for a roof. Another really good example is using super high quality HVAC systems. I can tell you that the 3 things that generate calls in my world as a property manager of my rentals, I don't manage anybody else's. These are just mine. So that's only my experience. But the HVAC system is one of them. Plumbing issue, usually rough plumbing, or an electrical issue, and I'll cover them. So the HVAC issue would be like, hey, my mini split's not blowing hot air right now. What should I do? Well, I hire out a professional HVAC company to install the very best product on the market that has the very best warranty. They're almost 2 that are equal. Mitsubishi and Daikin, I believe, are the favorites. They're my favorites. They're the best. They have the best warranties. So if there's ever an issue, I get a tenant that says the mini split unit in my bedroom is not blowing hot air, or it's not blowing cold air, and it's 100 out, I can defer them straight to the Daikin or Mitsubishi rep. So that's really advantageous. If I were to buy a Mr. Cool at Costco for half the price and install it myself, I wouldn't get that service. I wouldn't get that warranty. All the deferred maintenance, all the routine maintenance, I should say, would be placed on me. Another one for electrical that I get often is a tenant calls and says, "Hey, my lights keep going out in my bedroom." Well, there's a new code that says anywhere that a person can sleep, you need an arc fault interrupter, and these arc fault interrupters are super sensitive. So if you plug in, a computer charger or an old boom box or something that has maybe not a short but doesn't have perfect electrical resistance, it'll actually trip that arc fault. So I can just defer that to my professional electrician who did all the rough electrical and say, hey, can you go out and replace the arc fault at unit so and so? And then plumbing would be the other one. If there's ever any plumbing issues besides like a feminine product that was flushed down the toilet, or what's another one, like too many potato peels in the garbage disposal, if there's ever any other plumbing issue, I can defer that and send that out. Another one that I'm really keen on, and I learned this the hard way, is I used to love to do decks. All my ADUs had a cool little deck of some sort, and it's just too much maintenance. It's splinters, it's every 5 years sanding and refinishing. It's buying super duper expensive, low UV Varathane, water based. I've tried every product out there, and they last about 5 to 7 years when snow sits on them for half the year and sun beats down on them for the rest of the year. So I've gone to concrete. Concrete is not going to move. It's going to maybe fade and crack a little bit, but it's going to be absolutely maintenance free. And tenants love them. They're really easy to keep clean. Nobody's going to get a splinter in their foot. So the roofing, HVAC, plumbing, electrical systems, and then the patios are great ways. And then flooring is a huge one. And you would think that for all the content I produce, I would get more questions than, not more questions, but I'd say the most disputed thing that I ever say is I use hardwood floors in pretty much every unit. And one of the top 2 or 3 most asked questions I get is, Derek, why don't you use LVP flooring? So I do use LVP if it's on a concrete slab. I just did a couple of garage conversions, and LVP is perfect for a slab on grade. But I like to use hardwood because, again, property management's built in. Use oak hardwood. In 100 years, it might be dinged up. I might have to refinish it. There might be some separation in the seams, but it's going to last forever. If anybody can show me sheet vinyl or luxury vinyl plank that's 100 years old and still looks good, I would use that. But it's just, I haven't seen it yet. I like products that are hard, like wood and tile, that are fairly timeless. So that's kind of my short how I build property management into it. Let's see. I want to grab a few more questions here. K Dockery, metal roofs are the best for sure. Let's see. We have another comment here that's it, and help me with the spelling. Sioban side. I'm doing that period. I'm also including outside services like landscaping, so they won't have to worry about that. Lawn cutting and snow removal go a long way. Oh, great points. I'm so glad you brought that up. So another thing I have in my leases is I do all the yard maintenance for the front yard, and I ask them if they want to do the backyard. Most people don't want you in their backyard, I've kind of found. So but I love that you talk about lawn cutting and snow removal go a long way for sure. That's really cool. I know that if you're using professional property management, those property managers get a little bit better rate, and they have a blow and go service. They usually cover their lawns, but that again is going to be outside of that, say 10% management you're paying to the management company. You're also going to use their vendor, the lawn mowing service. Say they're $200 a month. Well, they're probably going to charge you 5 or 10% on top of that. So if you have more money than time, just know you're paying for that with property management. I'm not saying property managers are bad or you shouldn't use them. I'm just trying to highlight the benefits based on my experience of self-managing, especially now more than ever with, like I said, the tenants are about to have the upper hand, rents are flat, vacancies rising. We are going to have to do our very best to give our tenants a better product and treat them better than we ever have if we want our places to be full. Let's see. Oh, Siobhan. Okay, cool. Thanks, Siobhan. That's I know you. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to butcher your name. So I wanted to keep these 30 minutes, maybe 45. I've done a few lives. I'm trying to do them on the weekends, like every other weekend. If anybody's interested in a specific time, Saturdays are was my original thought. But Saturday is such a family day for so many people. So if you don't mind dropping in the comments here, what day, if I did a live every 2 weeks, when's the best time and day to do it? Is it a Saturday morning? Is it a Sunday afternoon? I always thought that weekdays everybody was busy and working, but maybe it's a weekday. If you have an opinion of that, I'm just learning here too. I mean, how can I help? How can I best help you guys? If you're not on the live call right now and you're listening or watching this later, feel free to drop it in the comments. Like I said, I do read every comment I get. I get a notification to the email on my dashboard, so I'll be able to go back in there and look at that. If you feel that you're getting value from anything on my channel, tell me, hey, Derek, we like the how-tos, or we like the fixes you do for your tenants, or we like it when you talk about this, or don't do this. You look stupid when you do that. Any good feedback is going to make me better. the better I get, I think the more people I can help in the kind of ADU how-to space. I usually will take a list of questions that I get all week via like Instagram videos or some of my YouTube shorts or some of the YouTube videos I'm doing. And after a week or two, I'll compile those and then I'll do a live at the end of that 2-week period. And that's what this was. I got several questions about how do you manage tenants? What are, how do you find a good renter? How long do they stay? I had probably, I don't know, a dozen questions that were related to tenancy in the last 2 weeks. That's how I got this. For the folks that are subscribers here, thank you so much. I started this channel a year ago with the thought of if I can help one person build their very own ADU, it's going to be a success. And we're like just over a year. I started this channel December 19th of last year and of 2021. So it's just over a year old. And we have over 2,000 subscribers. I've done a bunch of really fun stuff. It's made me better at what I do. So I appreciate you guys hanging on and sticking with some of my videos. I have a really exciting series coming up. I haven't been posting a lot of longer videos because I'm doing an 8-series video production with Bigger Pockets YouTube channel. And we're going to do several walkthroughs of ADUs that I built or friends of mine have built. And then right now we're doing there'll be 4 15-minute videos on an actual ground up ADU build. And I've already filmed most of it and submitted it, but it's going to be a step-by-step build. We're literally from the ground up, from like going to City Hall out to the site, cutting a pad with an excavator, bringing in rock, pouring the forums, starting the framing, looking at all the plumbing systems, electrical systems. So it's going to be really cool. It's going to, the 4 videos, 15 minutes each-ish. So it should be like a full hour between the 4 videos of how we're building a ground up ADU, start to finish. Obviously, I can't hone in on every single tiny detail, but it's going to be an awesome overarching deal. So that's why I haven't been posting a lot of stuff, because I'm giving all my filming time to that project. And as opposed to just putting it on my channel where 2,000 people might see it, more like, most of my videos only get, say, 500 views in a couple days. By giving the footage to them and putting it on their platform, they get the credit for it. Their YouTube channel gets all the data, but more people will see it. It'll help more people, which is my ultimate goal. So a few things that are popping up here. So Siobhan says Sunday afternoons. She said she was listening to another Bigger Pockets, and they say the market is about to be very good for purchasing. I'd be interested in hearing your general. Okay, so purchasing properties. I totally agree. I'm under contract on 3 different properties in the last 2 weeks, and I haven't bought anything in 16 months. So the opportunities that I've seen recently, lately, locally, have all just been as of late. So great point. And I'll take a note of that for 2 weeks from now for potentially a Sunday afternoon. Wanting to know about strategies and how to get ready and when you think it might be a good time to purchase some good ADU finds. That'll be an awesome one. Yeah, I get a lot of questions about that. Just real quick, while everybody's here, the best way to build or get an ADU is to buy one. So to buy a primary house that already comes with one. So maybe I'll do a video on how to find ADU properties and some of the key search words I use and some of the secrets I use to try to find houses that my favorite, a house that has an illegal ADU in an area that allows ADUs, and you can get a discount on the house. Let's see. Hey, Donna, love your videos. Just starting a garage conversion. Nice. That's awesome, Donna. Oh, I know you from, I met you guys up in Portland, Oregon. Cool. I have an awesome garage conversion video that's about 12 minutes long. That's on my YouTube channel under my recent videos and also under my popular videos. And then I have a playlist specifically about garage conversion ADUs. I just did one and I went through the whole process of literally cutting out all the concrete and the slab to put in all the plumbing to a full conversion. I literally went like start to finish. So I think there's 30 something videos on the garage conversion series. Question: have you ever installed a whole house water filtration system in an ADU? Metals and water in my area make it hard for tankless water heaters and faucets. I have not installed a full filtration system in an ADU ever. I know I have participated in installation processes on whole house systems for water hardening or water softening, but I've never done one in an ADU. I would say to um, do some research on the ability for different tankless hot water heaters to handle different heavy metals and minerals, because there is a process. I know I use the product I use is made by Noritz. These are on-demand hot water heaters. They're engineered and built in Japan. Noritz, Nortiz, and they actually have a section in the owner's manual about minerals and hard waters and deposits. And it has to do with back flushing the heat exchanger and the coils once a year with vinegar. I've never done it, but I just remember reading that when I read the whole owner's manual and was like, whoa, gee whiz. So something to look into. But no, I don't have any firsthand experience on that. Can't wait for the step-by-step. Yeah, that'll be cool. So awesome. We're at 51 minutes here. If there's any other questions, I'll give everybody maybe 15 seconds. If you have any other question, if you think of something later, like I said, I get every email for every comment. I respond to every one of them myself. If you ever have any ADU questions or I can help, feel free to comment on one of my videos. ThatADUguy.com is kind of my homepage. It talks about what I do, current projects I'm doing, a lot of the vendors that I use, other, like, call them my competition, other people that are what I would consider ADU experts in different states. They're on my resources page of ThatADUguy.com, so you can check that out. I have, what else do I have there? I've got two free sets of plans that are approved in my city and my county. They're not going to be pre-approved in your city or county, but you can print them off and take them into the planning department and say, can I get these approved here? It might be a really good start of just a way to kind of cost out an ADU. So I have free plans there. I've got engineers and architects that I work for. I've got friends of mine in Portland that are ADU experts, friends of mine in California that are ADU experts. I've got different links to different resources. Again, most of it's free. If you ever want one-on-one time with me, you can always book a consultation call. So I work with first-time home buyers 100% free. And then I have a rate for homeowners and then a different rate for investors. But all the information is free if you want to go just watch all the videos, not just mine, but there's a ton of great free resources for ADU building, ADU financing, ADU designing, ADU management out there. But if you ever do want to compress time and get, my 30 years worth of experience, you can call me direct via that consult tab. So I hope everybody had a great day. Happy Sunday. I hope everybody has an awesome and safe work week. And remember, being a good builder, being a good investor, being a good ADU developer really is, it doesn't matter unless you have good tenants. So remember, it's about our tenants. Let's treat them right. Let's give them the very best high demand, low supply product. And then once we get them there, let's treat them really well so they stay. Thank you, everybody. And I hope to see you guys soon. Take care.